To begin with, we'll go to Revelation. Revelation something. Yeah, Revelation 2. I'll hit the homework. I'm sure everybody did your homework. Got answers for me. Sunday, I presented an issue. I don't think you got it. Maybe, I don't know. Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Revelation 2, verse 10. He says, "Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." Okay, so he says 10 days you get tribulation. So what is the 10 days in reference to? What does that mean? Okay, so nobody did it. So
Can we have another redo? Can we do this again?
No, too late. So 10 in the Bible. Just think about it. What's 10 in the Bible? Okay, how do you prove that?
David was 10th generation, second king.
That's good. Okay. That's the standard answer, is that it means rule. Dr. Ruckman says it means Gentile. But there's something more simple than all of that. You know what 10 means without anybody trying to have to indoctrinate you into it. 10. You've heard every preacher say it for your whole life.
10.
The tithe is the 10th. Okay, so you know what 10 means. Why do they give a tithe? What does 10 mean? 10 is you're giving a tithe. You're doing something to your own detriment in order to get a blessing from God. That's the tithe. The Old Testament, they gave 10% of their goods to the priest. That giving, and it says of their first fruits. Okay, so as soon as they got something in, they knock 10% off, and that goes to the priest. Why? Because they're saying, I will do just the opposite of what normal thinking would do. Normal thinking would do, you can all you get, and you get all you can, you sit on the lid. He says, no, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to give 10% away. And if I give it to God, He'll bless me, and I'll get more than that. So that was the tithe. The tithe was you purposefully suffer your own self of your own volition in order to get a blessing from God. And that will hold true all the way through the Bible. 10 in this verse right here is showing you a pre-trib rapture. A rapture that will happen in the tribulation, that these people have the option to go through. They can go up instead of going through. But we'll look at some times that 10 days or 10 pops up, just so you see how it works. Genesis chapter 24, verse 55. Genesis 24:55. Genesis 24:55. And her brother and her mother said, let the damsel abide with us a few days. Okay, we're talking days now. At least 10. After that she shall go. So, what's the story that we're reading about? Who's that about? Look at the context. Rebecca. Mm-hmm. Okay, so she had 10 days to make up her mind if she was going to go with Eliezer to become a bride. So 10 days. Okay? In that 10 days, she made the right choice, and she got to marry her husband, and she got to go to a new land, just like we saw in Revelation. 10 days, suffer, and I'll give you life. Genesis 16:3. Now this one is not 10 days, it's 10 years, but this one is so good that I just had to throw it in there. There's a whole lot more. I'm just going to give you a handful tonight. You can look them up and have fun with them. Genesis 16:3. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. Okay, for 10 years she's been tested. God's waited 10 years and not given her a child. She had no seed. So for 10 years she's tested and she fails. At 10 years, she says, take my handmaid. So the 10 there, she disobeyed with. So 10 is a testing period. You either pass and you get a blessing, or you fail and you get a blasting. It's just a few more chapters, she's dead. 1 Samuel 25. First Samuel 25:38. First Samuel 25:38. And it came to pass, about 10 days after that, the Lord smote Nabal that he died. Okay, you know the story. David has been in there taking care of this guy's servants. He's been watching their flocks and making sure nothing bad happens to them. David says, hey, we need some food. He goes to Nabal, or sends somebody to Nabal to get some food. Nabal says, no, I'm not going to give you anything. Nabal's a churlish man, is how it puts it. He's been given 10 days to rectify his situation, to correct foolish behavior, and he didn't do it within 10 days. So you know what? God kills him. 10 days, he had 10 days. Jeremiah chapter 42. Jeremiah 42 verse 6. Jeremiah 42:6. Whether it be good or whether it be evil, we will obey the voice of the Lord our God, to whom we send thee, that it may be well with us, when we obey the voice of the Lord our God. And it came to pass after 10 days that the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. Okay, they wanted to do right. They asked for it. God said, okay, let's test you. 10 days. Nothing. No words from me. 10 days. Then 10 days, the word of the Lord shows up. As in the actual Jesus Christ, the Word, will show up after 10 days in the tribulation. Daniel chapter 1, verse 12. Daniel 1:12. This is Daniel. Of course, he's been brought into the captivity, and he's decided he's not going to eat the meal that's prepared by the king. Daniel 1, verse 12. He says, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. So 10 days is a proving time period. It's a time to be proved. Look at it again, verse 14. So he consented to the men, to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. Verse 15. At the end of 10 days, their countenance. So when 10 was over, something happened. Their countenance appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. After 10 days, they're in perfect health, and you'll see if you keep reading, they go in before the king. Just like will happen in the tribulation he told you about in Revelation 2. 10 days I'm going to test you. 10 days the devil's going to come after you. For 10 days, be faithful. And guess what? I'll give you life. Pure life that you don't have now. I'll give you life. And guess what? They get to see the king after 10 days. Let's look at it again. Acts chapter 25. Acts 25, verse 6. Acts 25, verse 6. After you put all of these together, you start to see a clear picture, but I didn't give them all to you, so you can look them all up and get excited about it yourself. Acts 25, verse 6. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down to Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. Okay, so there's a 10-day time period, then the judgment seat. Guess what? For you and I too. God will give you a time period to be tested. Here he's saying it's 10 days. So you could probably break your life up into 10-day increments and see your testing time period. And at the end of those time periods, that's what he's marking down for the judgment. Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 9. Isaiah 6, verse 9. And he said, Go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the hearts of this people fat, and their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and convert, and be healed. This is an odd situation here. God's telling them, block these people from understanding. Take note of this passage because it's the most quoted by Jesus Christ. He'll quote it frequently in his ministry. And then all the other apostles do as well too. Verse 11. Then said I, Lord, how long? And he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabitants, and the houses without men, and the land be utterly desolate. And the Lord remove men far away, and there be great forsaking in the midst of the land. But yet in it shall be a tenth. Okay, we know what 10 is. 10 people, a tenth. A tenth, and it shall return, and what? Shall be eaten. That's right. The tithe of the Jews, physical humans, are going to return. Remember when Jesus says, when you see these signs, get down from the house and flee. Don't stop to get anything and don't look back. You find here he's saying a tenth are going to return. They will have fled and said, hey, this ain't no life. I got to sneak back in there and get something. 10% of them do. What happens when they get back? They're cannibalized, according to the Bible. So that's a tithe of the Jews for the nation of Israel. Look at it in Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 8, verse 23. Zechariah 8, verse 23. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirts of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. Now you get a tithe of the Gentiles. The Gentiles, 10 Gentiles come to one Jew and say, how can we help you? What can I do for you? I know God's with you. The only way to see God is through you. And that was what the Jew was designed for to begin with. You find further references on that in Matthew 5, verse 8, and 6, verse 33. All right, so that's the fun experiment with the homework everybody did. All right, let's go on to the lesson.